It is really nice to be here because, you know, when I started out in this business, if you mentioned the word breastfeeding, you just got a few giggles and people would say, what's that? And now, you know, it's a whole different world where at least people are arguing and fighting about it and know what they're talking about. The first thing I want to mention tonight is something really heavy and serious, is about the earthquake in Haiti. And I think one of the things I heard as I was driving in was saying, oh, the Marines and the Army from the US are going to be sent in. And my heart sank. I'm sure they'll do lots of wonderful things of shifting rubble and stuff like that. But one of the most serious things in disasters is that the military often bring in loads of infant formula and bottles. And this raises the death rate. And it's all due to ignorance on the part of people in industrialized countries. And it happened in the tsunami, it's happened in every earthquake, every natural disaster. And it's the one time when there should never be any artificial feeding. You know, and one can even take risks with wet nursing and in those conditions because it's just too dangerous to do. Just to give an example, when 1 million people crossed the border from Rwanda to Zaire after the Rwandan massacre, this is evidence from Save the Children Fund, they only had 6 babies who needed feeding. And the easiest thing to, you know, that was the only thing. And one baby was because a woman who was wet nursing the baby actually was 9 months pregnant, and she had to stop by the roadside and give birth to her own child. But she'd been breastfeeding this baby all the way through, and he was an orphaned baby. So I just pray and hope that the Marines and that there are intelligent, well-informed people in the United States who will try and educate the disasters people. If any of you want to know more about this, if you look on ENN, www.ENN, emergenciesnutritionnetwork.com, they are a network of all the aid agencies who deal with nutrition, and they've got the most amazing breastfeeding education and infant feeding education, because obviously very occasionally you do have to artificially feed. And they've got very clear guidelines, and you can download all their stuff free, and it's there to educate aid workers. The other thing I can have a little boast is that I did a new chapter in here called Your Generous Donations May Do More Harm Than Good. And the professor of nutrition at Columbia University is using that chapter to teach her students about nutrition in emergencies, so which is nice. So I felt that it's, you know, we're in this grave situation about Haiti and people are thinking about these things. And many of your friends and colleagues will say, well, shouldn't we be sending, maybe not your friends and colleagues, maybe your acquaintances, because you will probably need their awareness raising about the issue of emergencies and how a lot of donations can do harm. You know, this hadn't happened when I was planning to come here tonight. The thing I do want to mention is that I was delighted when Anne got in touch with me and said she was writing this book, because it shifts the paradigm, it shifts the whole attitude, because before that there was a lot of closet long-term breastfeeding, closet breastfeeding. But in fact we know, as if all of you will read, that this is normal for most of human existence. And my consciousness has been raised by meeting people from developing countries in my work, which has been a huge privilege. And just to give a little anecdote, I was giving a lecture in Bangkok, in the Hilton Hotel, to lots of terribly tough, terribly elite doctors and health administrators from Thailand, and it was for UNICEF. And it was led by the head of Mother and Child Health there, who was a really dynamic and very small man and very exciting. And everybody, you know, wore very nice, smart suits. And somebody asked a question and said, what's the natural time of breastfeeding, you see? And I said, well, and I looked at them all and knew as the elite, probably a lot of them didn't breastfeed or only breastfed for a very short time. And I didn't want to come across as a weirdo. I'm very conscious of my target audience, you see. And I said, well, actually, it is between 2.5 to 7 years. And I actually had read this article by Kathy Detweiler, the anthropologist who worked this out, that most are our ancestors. And I said, but look, I'm not suggesting that 7 years should be the policy for Thailand. I think that the WHO policy of 6 months exclusive and 2 years and beyond is perfectly adequate, because I wanted to be conformist and not alarmist. And at the end, the head of mother and child health, very conventional, you're an obstetrician, and he said, well, I'm delighted to hear that 7 years is the normal time, natural time for breastfeeding, because I was breastfed for 7 years. I well remember coming home in my school uniform, and my mother wore a sarong, so I would suckle, and then I'd go out to play, and then I'd do my homework. And of course, creep that I am, I said, well, this is obviously why you're so intelligent and head of mother and child health. And then, of course, I've met so many people, and what it dawned on me, I mean, I have learned far more from my work in developing countries than I ever learned from poring over books and libraries here. And what I realized is that there were, you know, that I've met so many people who were breastfed for 4, 5, 6 years, that they didn't let their colleagues know in the corridors of UNICEF or WHO, because that's rather primitive, that's traditional, that was their life in the village. The fact they'd all got PhDs and advanced medical degrees sort of made them shy, because they didn't want to tell other people. And one of the sad things is when WHO and UNICEF started promoting the 2 years and beyond, many African countries started saying to people, you mustn't breastfeed longer than 2 years, when people normally breastfed for 3 or 4 years, because they were getting it from the medical profession, and they started reducing their length of time. So I think it just shows how there is, we've shut off a great source of information and wisdom. And the fact today is, we're talking about it is that mothers can do what they want. That is the great thing, is that mothers can make choices. But actually, if you don't breastfeed your child for 3 or 4 years in Sierra Leone or Mozambique or Bangladesh, your child is far more likely to die of malnutrition, because there often simply isn't enough money or availability of nutritious food, and of course disease protection, to keep your child healthy and alive. You know, and so it's a matter of it being essential in and if we think the majority of the human race is poor, most of the world is poor, most of the world is like that. So here it's all seen as a matter of individual female indulgence and privilege or rights or whatever. But actually, for the great majority of the human race, it's a matter of life and death and health.